Welcome to today's episode of Craft Cut Magic. And today what we're going to be doing is actually something a little bit different than what I've been doing in the past. For those of you who have been following the channel, you know that we've been making a lot of paper crafts recently and not necessarily going too far outside of that. Well, today what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be making a very fun bewitching sign for Halloween. And I hope you guys will enjoy this project as much as I do. And for this project, you're going to need vinyl. We're not even going to be using paper this time. So let me show you what materials you're going to need to make this project. So here is kind of an overview of all of the materials that you're going to need. Hopefully you'll see that I have three different colors of vinyl here. I have yellow, black, and white. We have some different kinds of tools. You're definitely going to want your weeder tool for this project because we are using vinyl. I have a pair of scissors, squeegee tool here. I also have this, I call it a roller tool. I'm not quite sure the proper name for it, but this is just going to help me to make sure that our vinyl is really stuck down onto our light grip mat. As you can see, we also have a ruler here, and you'll probably want a bigger ruler than this, but this is to measure out how big our project is going to be. You're also going to want a wood sign. For me, I'm choosing a round whitewashed sign, and I actually got this from Hobby Lobby. So if you want to go and find this, that's where I found mine. Then we also have three different kinds of paint. We have midnight blue, have some white paint, and then I have some glow in the dark paint, just because I'm thinking I might want to flick on some stars that will glow in the dark. And then of course, if you're using paint, you're going to need some paint brushes. So I have a couple different kinds. I have a foam brush, kind of a larger bristle brush, and then just two other sizes as well. And that should be all of the materials that you need. Other than that, of course, you're going to want your Cricut machine, and then you're going to want a device that has design space installed on it so that we can go ahead and make our project. So once you've gathered up all of your materials and you're ready to go, we're going to switch over now to the computer so we can start to create this project together. Wonderful, and now that we are on the home page of Design Space, we're just going to come up here to the left-hand side. We're going to select New Project and hit Blank Canvas. Now immediately Images is going to open up. However, today what we want to do first is we want to pull up a shape. Now our sign is a circle. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a circle shape onto my canvas. I'm going to increase its size, and then I'm also going to change the color just so I have something to work with in the back. We'll probably be changing this a little bit later in terms of color, just so you have an idea of how everything will look. But pretty much what this circle is going to be is our template. And so this is just the easiest way. Technically, you could change the operation to a guide if you would like. I'm just going to keep this though because I like having it completely full, and then I'll just remember to delete the circle at the end or hide it. So this is when it's a good idea to have your sign measured. So off screen, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to really quickly take the measurement of the inside of my sign, and that is the size that we are going to make this circle. So after measuring my circle for my sign on the inside of the rim, I found that I have about 11 inches of space to work with. However, since I don't want to tempt it too much, I'm going to say that I have 10 3/4 of an inch to work with, or 10.75 inches to make this project. So I'm just going to go ahead and close out of shapes, and we're going to change the size over here to 10.75. And now we know that if we go all the way up to the edge of this circle, we will definitely be right within where we need to be, just because we don't want to necessarily tempt it. If you want, you can always go ahead and say, yeah, I have 11 inches, and then just make sure that you give the right amount of space. I'm still going to go with that 10.75, just so that I'm really going to be able to have enough space on the edges for my entire image to fit. So now that we have our template piece ready to go, now we can come over to images and we can start searching for elements that we want. So for example, we are going to want a witch for this project. Now if you wanted to, you could go ahead and you could filter this by free images. You could also go ahead and search on the internet for an image that you would like to use as well. I'm just going to come down here and find a witch that I like, and be aware that this image that I'm choosing right here is not only something that they highly recommend, but it is also a Cricut Access image, as you can see right here. So just know that if you don't have the Cricut Access subscription, you will have to pay for this image, so just kind of be aware of that. Now, another thing that I want up on my canvas while we are working with this is a crescent moon. And this is definitely one that you could filter by free for. I'm going to be using this crescent moon as well. I'm going to add this to my canvas and pull it over. And that should be the only two images that we need. However, I am actually going to add a couple of stars in as well. So if you wanted to, you could go ahead and use some of these free stars. I'm actually going to unfilter, and I am going to be using this set of 3 as well. And just be aware, once again, this is also a Cricut Access image. And now that we have all of the images that we would like to use on our canvas, we can go ahead and start rearranging everything. So let's get into that. Alright, now with everything kind of rearranged to how we're liking it, I'm going to go ahead and come over here now to text, and we are going to be putting in 2 different forms of text. So this is going to be for our saying that's going to be going on our sign. So I'm going to type out happiness is a full moon. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the font. And this one in particular is going to be a font that I have downloaded into Cricut, and it's called Halloween. Now, you are more than welcome to search through the system. You are welcome to search through the Cricut entire database to find the kinds of fonts that you like. I recommend this freestyle script, maybe even the French script. Gabriola is always a good one if you're looking for kind of a flowing font, but you don't necessarily want to go overboard. Both well, all of those are pretty good, I'd say. But I am going to come down here and I'm going to actually click on this font, and it's called Halloween. From here, I'm going to change sizing. And I'm actually going to also close out of that, and we're going to curve this text. So once you're kind of satisfied with how that is, I'm going to tilt this once again, bring it over, and I'm going to change the font color just so it's a little more noticeable on our mock-up right now. And now I'm going to come back to text once again, and more than likely your text is still going to say whatever font it was the first time. You can go ahead and type out the next part of your saying that you would like to put on your design. So for me, it's going to be "and a fast broom." I'm going to change it to font Harrington, and I believe that this is a font that you should have through the system as well. But if not, just find another font that you like that you think pairs up with your prior font. And from here, it's all just kind of a matter of rearranging and finding how you like it. You can adjust the sizing, you can adjust your curvature, which once again, I know I didn't necessarily show you very well, but to curve your text, you just have to keep your text selected, and you come up here to this curve. And then from there, you can click and drag across to change how you have, well, how far of a curve you're creating along your text. And for me, that's more of an eyeball thing, and so is adjusting all of this. So I can't necessarily give you specifics. It's really just what you're looking for. So I went ahead and I did a little bit of adjusting to our sign. I changed a couple of things around over here. I also duplicated our stars and put them around our sign, and you can see they're going to be the same color as our moon. And I'm really happy with how this is looking. I also went ahead and I changed my template size to be the true size of the workspace that I have on my sign, just to see how everything will look at the end of the day, and I really like how it's going to turn out. So there's one more thing that I need to do, and I'm going to offset the witch that we have chosen. And the reason that I am doing this is because when we go ahead and put down our 2 layers, I want to make sure that the witch is pronounced on the blue, the dark blue that we have chosen in terms of paint for the background, because this is not a true representation of how I want this to look. So let me change some colors around a little bit so you have a better idea of how this sign's going to look once we have cut everything out. And so there it is, a little bit better idea of what everything's going to look like. Now that we have all this kind of figured out, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save our project because I'm happy with how everything looks and I'm ready to cut out the project. So we're just going to come up here and we're going to click on the Save button. Here, go ahead and give your project a title. I'm just going to title mine Bewitching Sign and save this. And now once your project has been saved, we can go ahead and we can begin to cut this out. Now, before we actually do go ahead and start working with this, first thing we need to do is we need to hide our template piece. So we're not going to be working with that circle anymore. I'm going to save the project once again. From here, now you're going to want to make sure that you go ahead and you turn on your Cricut machine, make sure that it's plugged in, that it's on a flat surface, and that you have enough space behind it for your mat. And then make sure that you also have your Bluetooth turned on your device so that once you reach that part, you're not going to run into any problems or make it wait for you to turn on the Bluetooth for your device. Okay, hopefully you've had enough time to go ahead and do that. If you do need more time, go ahead and just pause the video, because now we're just going to go ahead and we're going to come up here and click on the green Make button. Now, once you see this screen, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to be selecting on mat for any materials. Just know that if you use Cricut materials, sometimes go ahead and double check your packaging if you are using Cricut materials, because I believe a lot of the vinyl that Cricut sells nowadays is actually going to be the smart material, so you could go ahead and cut your vinyl without the need for a mat. So if you're using Cricut vinyl, go ahead and double check that and see. However, my vinyl is not actually Cricut brand, and I forgot to mention this earlier when I was going over my materials, but I get my vinyl specifically from 143vinyl.com just because I found that they are really good in terms of quality, and they're usually available in good amounts for a very good price. So what I mean by that is you can get a 12 by 12 sheet for really cheap. I don't have a price off the top of my head, but usually it's a lot better than necessarily what Cricut has to offer. However, definitely use the material that you're most comfortable with and double check what you're using to see what kind of load choice you're going to be choosing for this part. So mine's going to be on mat and 12 by 12 inches, and we're going to go ahead and click on confirm. So now we have our project copies pulled up. You can see that we have a couple of different mats. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be rearranging each of my mats to make sure that we get the most use of our vinyl in small amounts of space. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to start to readjust all of our mats so that we're using less material and still getting the full effect for our cuts. Are ready to be cut out, we can go ahead and click on the green continue. And now from here it's going to connect to our machine. And do as I say, not as I do. I did not turn on my Cricut machine, so I'm going to turn that on real quick. And now it's going to connect to my machine, which is the Maker 4. And then from here we can go ahead and select our material. Now for my vinyl in particular, I'm just going to be using this vinyl setting. If you don't have this as one of your bookmarked materials, you can just go ahead and browse all materials, search for vinyl, and you can find the proper selection for your materials. If you are using Cricut vinyl, just know that you're going to see a little Cricut symbol next to the material you choose. So just be sure that you select the proper cutting setting for the material that you're using. From here, we're going to go ahead and load our tools and materials. So we're going to switch back over now to the camera so we can go ahead and cut out our vinyl and then continue on with our project. So let's do that. Now that we have switched back to the camera, you can see here now I have all three of my colors of vinyl, and here is my light grip mat. I also just kind of want you to see that I don't necessarily have a full sheet of vinyl, meaning it's not a clean line. So I can go ahead and take scissors and I can fix that if I would like going forward. And then I just want you to see on the back that mine does say that this is StarCraft permanent adhesive. So it's going to be perfect for this kind of a craft because I won't have to worry in the future about the vinyl coming off since it is permanent. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove our protective covering from our light grip mat. And then we're going to go ahead and put our vinyl down on top of it. And I'm just going to do a quick check here. I believe, yeah, so I think I need to cut this excess material off. So this is again another reason why you should probably have scissors nearby, because then you can just go ahead and cut this either straight or as close to straight as you can get for your materials. And then just like with everything, we align it in the top left corner. We're going to make sure it's as straight as we can get it. I'm just going to push this down, and this is where that kind of roller tool comes in handy because I can just run this across here a few times. And now I know that my material is definitely ready to go. Going to push my mat in between the two guides, underneath the little guides here and all the way up to the rollers. And then I need to pull out my machine as well so that the mat, when it loads in, is not going to hit the wall behind it. So always keep that in mind as well. Make sure you have enough space behind your Cricut machine so that your material doesn't accidentally hit the back wall. And now with all of that taken care of, we're going to go ahead and hit on the load and unload button. And then we're going to start to cut out each of our materials. And we're just going to kind of repeat this with each step going forward. However, once we cut this, I am going to show you how to weed out vinyl as well. So I'm actually just going to cut all of my materials first, and then we're going to take them off of our mats. I'll show you how to weed here in a minute after we have cut out all of our materials. So let's do that part first, and then I'll show you how to weed. All right, perfect. So now we have all of our pieces cut out. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to close up my Cricut, turn it off, and then like with all of our materials, you want to bend the mat, not the material. So just kind of roll that mat off. And then what we can do is we can go ahead and put that protective covering back onto our light grip mat, and we can put this away for use another day for another project. I'm also just going to go ahead and complete my project on the computer. If you want to have it pulled up though to see how you're going to be doing this project on your sign here in a minute, you can also keep that as well. Now we're going to go ahead and we're actually going to start to weed out our materials. And you're going to want your scissors nearby, and you're going to want the weeder tool as well. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to cut out each of our pieces of vinyl. And I recommend cutting as close as you can for the most part, just because you probably want to keep what you can for later projects that you can use. I'm going to cut out each of our vinyl pieces, and sometimes it can be really difficult to see the lines. I don't think you are able to really see it right now where I'm cutting. However, I promise that the cut lines are here. I'm just going to go ahead and cut straight across. That's a good thing that I did that, because I almost didn't realize that I would have cut off part of the witch's foot. So definitely try to watch those lines as good as you can. The yellow is a little bit of a different story, just because it's such a huge moon. I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to kind of leave this one. However, I am going to cut off this corner here, because this is where our stars are. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep the yellow nearby, because we do have our moon. So we want to keep that nearby as well. Okay, so now I promised to tell you how you weed out vinyl. And it's really quite simple. You're just going to take your weeder tool. Let me zoom in here so you guys can see what I'm about to do a little bit better. So here's my vinyl, have my weeder tool, and then I'm just going to come in, and with each piece that I don't want, I'm just going to go ahead and weed it out. Now, the more fine pieces that you have, the more you're going to use the weeder tool for each. And then just be careful with these kinds of pieces, because if you're not too cautious, you could accidentally stick part of the vinyl to a part of your image that you need. And then I just usually crumple up the excess in a ball, keep it off on the side. And so now we have our witch. Now we can go ahead and we can weed out the stars. And you also want to kind of go slow with vinyl too, just because sometimes it can be unclear how well everything actually cut. Let's see here. I'm going to cut out both of these pieces now individually, because I have the text and I have the witch outline. So now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to finish weeding these final two pieces before we continue on. right, so now that all of our pieces are weeded out, we are ready to kind of start on the next part of our project. And that's actually going to not even be part of this. So I'm just going to put all of my tools off to the side here, put them out of the way, because the next thing that we have to do before anything is now we have to actually paint our sign. So go ahead and grab your sign, and then go ahead and also make sure that you're going to be working with it where you're, I know it's a little difficult to see, you're going to want to make sure that your hanging piece is straight up and down pretty much, so that when you're working with this, you know what you're dealing with in terms of what is going to be the top and the bottom of your image. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take our paint and a paintbrush, and we're going to go ahead and I'm going to start by painting this white part of my sign completely blue. And if you want to, you could take some sandpaper and you could kind of make sure that there aren't any imperfections. I'm not going to do that today, but you could do that if you wanted to. So with that being said, let's get into painting our sign. Okay, so I have one coat of paint down, and I'm definitely going to need more than just one coat. But for now, what I'm going to do is we're just going to go ahead and let this dry for a minute, and then I'm going to clean my brush, and then we can come back and we can paint this again. So our sign is actually looking really good so far with the blue paint. As you can see, I did the rim as well, trying to just keep it kind of clean looking. Now what I actually want to do is I want to flick some glow-in-the-dark paint onto this. The reason is because I just want it to kind of look like stars. So I'm just going to go ahead and going to shake up my paint. Going to open it up. I'm going to take a brush, dip it in there. I'm just gonna flick that paintbrush, like my nails as well. Just get some glow-in-the-dark stars onto our sign. And so now that we have gone ahead and flicked our glow-in-the-dark paint onto our sign, now we're just going to let this dry completely. So we're going to come back to this as soon as it's complete. All right, so now that we have given our paint tons of time to dry completely, technically if you want to, I know we flicked some glow in the dark paint onto our project. If you want to, you could also use some white paint as well and flick on some stars. So that's always an option that you can do. Otherwise, now that I know that this is completely dry, now we can go ahead and we can start to put our vinyl down onto our project. Now, in order to put our vinyl down onto our project, the way that we really want it to turn out, you're going to need something that I forgot to pull out in the first part of the video when I was showing you all of my supplies. So hopefully you saw my note there, but you're going to want some kind of transfer tape. And this is the one that I use. I also got this one off of 143 vinyl just because its stickiness is a good amount for me for my projects. But any kind of transfer tape I think will work. Just definitely be cautious when you're using transfer tape, because one of the reasons why I was waiting for this to dry for so long is because I want to make sure that I wasn't going to bring up any of the paint when I put down my vinyl. So kind of keep that in mind. So you're going to want your transfer tape. And then what we're going to do is we are actually going to be placing the moon down onto our project first. So we're going to start setting things up. We're going to use our transfer tape, and we're going to go ahead and put our vinyl down onto our project. So I'm just going to move that out of the way for a minute. And technically, I know it's very difficult to see, but the tip for the top part of my moon starts right here. And it curves all the way down to here. So I'm just going to grab my transfer tape. And I have lots of little sample pieces that I could use for other projects at different times. But for today, I need a bigger piece of transfer tape. So I'm just going to cut off some new. And what I usually like to do is I like to find the corner of mine and I lay it over this with the sticky side facing up. So I know how much of this I need to cut. And take your scissors. And we can just go ahead and run it across. Perfect. So now that our transfer tape is off to the side, I'm also just going to kind of check in terms of height, because I don't need more than what's necessary. I'm just going to kind of guesstimate. And cut. And then this excess piece I can just put back onto my roll for a later time, because you never know, I might need it at some point. Now for this piece in particular, I'm actually going to just take my hand to it, make this piece a little less sticky, because once again, I don't want the paint to come up from my project. so now that it's a little less sticky, and I'm sure you just saw this did not necessarily go the way I was hoping in terms of how straight it is to get the moon off, but that's okay. It's going to be just fine. Now I'm just going to go ahead and roll this back. And I'm going to try to take the moon with me and not the rest of the vinyl. So as you can see, we got that moon pretty darn well. There is a little bubble right here. I'm just going to smooth that out so we can use this vinyl for a later project. So now we have our moon, and it's on here pretty well. From here, I'm going to kind of put this off on the side. And then I want you to make sure that you know where the top of your sign is. So for me, the hanger has this little piece of cardboard around the top of it. So I know exactly where my top part of my project is. Now comes a bit of a tricky part when you don't have anything on the back. And that is actually placing the moon onto the project in a way that you like it. So the nice thing about this project in particular is that we have this little lip right here, so I can kind of see prior to sticking down how it's going to look on the inside. And once again, you could also check your image on your computer or your device to see how it's going to turn out in the end. Okay, I'm liking how this is placed. So you can kind of see it just kind of fell into the corner right here. But this is where you're going to want your scraper tool. And the reason why is because this is going to make sure that you don't have any air bubbles. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to kind of gently, and more on the yellow part and less on the rest of the transfer tape. I'm just going to start kind of pressing this down, trying to make it so we don't get very many air bubbles in our project. And I know that the paint is also down as well, which could also create some bubbles, but I'm more okay with the paint kind of being the reason for it being a little bit bubbly than anything else. And we're just going to gently peel off our transfer tape. And if for some reason your transfer tape doesn't want to work nicely with you, you can just go ahead and repress on those parts. All right, so as you can see, none of the paint came off onto my transfer tape because we let it dry for so long and because I tapped down on its stickiness. So now we have the vinyl for the moon down onto our project, which is fantastic. Now what I want to do is I want to place the witch first, and then we can put the saying on, and then we can deal with the three little stars. I think this might be a little bit of a better angle for you guys. So definitely one of the things I recommend you doing with your projects is checking to see how everything is turning out. This isn't quite the way that I want it, of course, because we're trying to fit this onto one full sheet to cause the least amount of waste. So I'm actually going to cut this out, and we will do both of these parts separately. So you can kind of see how it's going to look. And here is our witch. But remember, one of the things that we need to do with this witch first is we also need to put its outline on. So we're going to do that. first and foremost, so I'm going to pull this out of the way. So the black is going to go on top of the white. And let me see if I don't really have a good piece for this, so technically I'm going to cut out part of the piece that we just used for this. And we can save this piece for those. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece, this black one right here, press the transfer tape on, and smooth it as best as I can. You can take your scraper, squeegee tool, and just kind of get out as many of those air bubbles, make your transfer tape as flat as possible. And then actually for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by pulling this back up here. Now there's a reason why I'm doing this, and it's because I want to try to get this as accurate as possible. And if you remember on our little outline, we had a very thin border. And I'm just going to try to make it as accurate as possible. I like how that looks, so I'm going to press it down. I'm going to burnish right up to that line. Then we're just going to slowly, gently peel this off. And you can see it's not perfect, but it's going to do what it's needed. And honestly, in a way, I actually kind of like how this turned out, to be honest, mainly because it will look more like moonlight in the back. Give it a little bit of dimensionality. So if you're really a stickler about having it completely outlined the way that it was, definitely just try to place it as best you can. Use different methods to make sure everything lines up the way you would like, so you don't necessarily have all of this. But I like how it looks. And so I'm still going to use this. And I don't know if you could just see that, but my witch wasn't necessarily coming off this time from the backing. So I'm just trying to get it off a little bit easier. And the more you layer vinyl, the more difficult it tries to be in terms of coming off with transfer tape. So kind of keep that in mind as well. So here's our witch on our transfer tape. Now I'm just going to go ahead and we are going to place this at the top. I'm going to put her down like this. And gently peel back that transfer tape once again. And it's looking amazing so far. So now we're good to go ahead with our text. I'm just going to get some of these scrap pieces out of the way. I'm also going to move this one off to the side because now we're going to do happiness is a full moon. And I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I'm going to round this off a little bit more. so I have a little bit of a better idea. The thing is, there we go. So that's how we wanted our text to lay, pretty much, except for that little corner is giving us a bit of grief. So I definitely recommend laying your things out before you go ahead and put them on. So there's our happiness is a full moon. And then you can kind of see, and a fast broom will go right underneath. About like that. So what we're going to do now, we're going to take our sticky transfer tape. I'm going to line it up as best as I can to get the most on there. And you can see that I did not quite get the entirety of the end with our transfer tape, which that's not a problem. That's kind of why I also keep these little scrap pieces, is because sometimes I have to go over the top of something because I accidentally missed. I'm just going to grab one, put that off to the side, and I'm just going to take this, I'm going to stick that down over the top of it, really get that down. And the same thing I'm going to do for the rest of this text as well. So I'm really going to just kind of take my scraper, scrape over the top of it to get it flat and ready to go, because here in just a second, it's going to be very, very necessary. Now, because of the way this one is going to be placed, I am actually going to cut our transfer tape once again. Just really kind of stick close to that line of the backing of the vinyl. Especially with these, because that was becoming quite a necessary thing. And that's another good reason why you might want to place things beforehand, is because then you know where you need to kind of cut your transfer tape and everything to make sure that this will fit down on your project nicely. So here we go. You can see it's still going to stick down quite nicely. And then comes the fun part. We get to peel this off. And it came off quite nicely. If you don't think it's going to come off that nicely, go a lot slower with taking your transfer tape off. And what I'm going to do is this is where it gets a little more tricky, especially since this is a curve and not normal. So I'm going to take it here. Let this kind of fall a tad. It's not quite there. Okay, so that's going to stay. And that's okay. I'm just going to make it so we'll get this as close as possible. So there's happiness. Going to kind of come from this way, and we're going to go over the A. We're going to scrape the rest of the way for is, and we should have this down just fine now. even though we have that little bubble. And that is something that you will encounter with transfer tape, with vinyl, is that sometimes things don't necessarily stick the way you were expecting. So always expect the unexpected when you work with vinyl, and just be willing to kind of adapt to get it the way you would like it to look. So there's that one. And now all we have to do is put down and a fast broom. And so we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to take this transfer tape away because I'm not going to use this again. So I'm actually going to throw both of those away. And what's great is that I can still use this kind of curved piece that we just used. And I'm going to stick it down. Technically, I don't even need that little piece from earlier. All right, now we can go ahead and we can put this one down. So I'm just going to peel it off from the back. I'm not too concerned about this one with nothing coming off. Really, it's kind of the dots for the eyes that you have to keep an eye on. Whoops, sorry everyone. There we go. I like the way that that looks. Just gonna smooth that down. Then I'm actually gonna come over here to this part. Just peel this off. Perfect. So both of those have now been stuck down. And what's great is from here, we're just going to place our 3 little sets of stars. Okay, so now we have all of our vinyl stuck down, and so here is kind of a look at our sign, and it's turning out really good. There's just one more thing that I want to do, and I'm sure you can kind of see. We do have some bumps in our vinyl. I'm okay with that. If you are not, just kind of be aware of that for when you do the glow-in-the-dark paint. And flicking the paint down, you might want to wait on that step for a little while. But I actually want to go a step further with this project. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take our glow-in-the-dark paint. I'm going to paint over the top of the happiness is a full moon and a fast broom, just so that that can glow in the dark. I'll probably outline the witch also in glow-in-the-dark paint, the moon and the stars. So we're going to do that next. All right, so here we have our completed sign for our fun little Bewitching Halloween time sign, and it actually looks really good. The glow-in-the-dark paint is all on here. Now, a couple things. The first thing being, technically, if you didn't want to use glow-in-the-dark paint over all of this white vinyl, technically there is such a thing as glow-in-the-dark vinyl. It's out there, it does exist. For the sake of this project, I went ahead and I just painted over it because I think it's a little bit easier to find glow-in-the-dark paint than maybe necessarily glow-in-the-dark vinyl. However, if you can and you want to just take that extra step so you don't have to worry about majority of the glow-in-the-dark paint, you could definitely do that. Now, the second thing, some of you might have noticed that the saying that we have on here says that happiness is a full moon, and I did a crescent moon on here. There is a reason for that, I promise you. It's not that I don't understand what a full moon is or anything like that. Actually, it's because I've done a little bit of magic to this with the glow-in-the-dark paint. And because of that, when you put this in the dark, and you can kind of see the line right here of the glow-in-the-dark paint that I painted, when this gets lit up at night, it actually creates a full moon effect. So I thought that was a fun kind of tie-in because it is a witch, a little bit of magic involved there. So I promise there was a method to my madness. Now, of course, this is always up to you to decide what you want to do. If you had wanted to do a full moon right off the bat, you definitely could have done so. I just thought that this was a fun project to do the way that it is, and I'm really enjoying how it turned out. So I want to show you how this looks when it glows in the dark. So I'm going to actually insert a picture of this so you can see it very well, because for some reason glow in the dark doesn't show up well when it is on a camera through a video. So here is that picture of our sign glowing in the dark. And I'm really happy with the way that this project turned out in the end. And I think that this is going to be a wonderful, wonderful addition to my Halloween decorations. Now, I hope you enjoy following along with this craft today. If you did like the video, I hope you'll consider liking and subscribing to the channel, because I do projects like this quite often. I try to do it every once in a while to help you learn how to use your Cricut and show you the different kinds of materials that you use. And with that being said, everyone, I will see you guys in the next episode. Thanks so much.